Well, couldn't travel alone forever, could you, Doctor? It's classic Doctor Who time, and I'm not going to necessarily say that this episode, in terms of the bulk of it, the plot is particularly thematic for Halloween, which is the day I'm releasing this, but the title felt like it might be The Face of Evil. This is a first time for me. This is a fourth Doctor Tom Baker story. It is the introduction of Leela, who I have talked about a few times, most recently in The Sunmakers and Horror at Fang Rock. And I liked her a lot in both of those. The more I see of Leela, the more I like her. And that's kind of interesting, given that when I kind of got the general pitch and saw images of her, somewhat quote-unquote primitive woman in basically a leather bikini who's going to need to have way more stuff explained to her and just kind of be slow and be mocked for being stupid. Yeah, I know how this goes. Yeah, none of that is how it plays out. Not here, not anywhere else. I like her a lot, but we'll come back to her. So this follows on from a brief period where the Doctor was actually traveling without a companion. I believe the previous one was The Deadly Assassin, which I have already done a review of a while ago, back on the main channel, actually. I don't think I'd even started putting the classic reviews in the break room yet. So that was a little while ago, but he does not currently have a companion, and he lands on this planet and finds himself among Leela's people. Now, they are, as I said, primitive. I've got to put that in air quotes, like TV primitive. You know how it is. They're wearing leather. They've got outdated technology and weapons. They make use of crossbows, which is actually a little bit more advanced than I was expecting. Given their general look, I was kind of expecting spears. But they're using crossbows. They appear to live in huts and stuff of that nature. So it's kind of standard. And when Leela first encounters the Doctor, she assumes he is the evil one, because he doesn't look like any of the rest of them. Why wouldn't she assume that? We find out that this tribe is very they have a leader, but pretty much all the decisions are being made by the religious figurehead who claims to talk to their god. But there's also quite a lot of internal politicking. This is kind of where the early hints of how well written this serial is came in. And it was pretty early into the thing, which is that, the setup of primitive, again, TV primitive, people, with a certain religious fervor and a figurehead who's telling them what to do, saying he talks to God yeah, I've seen how this goes. But the characters are not played for fools. A good chunk of them are either questioning the religion as a whole, or at the very least don't believe the priest character, Neva. They don't trust him in specific. They believe that he is even if they have some faith in their beliefs and their religions, they don't trust him. They don't believe him. And you have people who are sort of forming their own little alliances between each other, not necessarily for power, but because they think the way things are currently structured isn't working. It's not that they necessarily want to tear down the whole system, but they believe that the people who are currently running it, this doesn't work. So there's a lot more nuance. And as I said, a lot more internal politics, right down to the point that you can't necessarily count on who is going to side with whom as the story progresses forward. It all tracks, but even when somebody kind of appears to betray somebody, betray's a bit of a big word, but low-key betray somebody else, that tracks with your deal, though. And so there's just more layers, more nuance to this. And any further summation of the plot is going to involve spoilers, because right down to pretty much the very end of the first episode, it drops something big and then goes way further with it than I was expecting. It goes some interesting places, and I don't want to ruin that for anybody. I do still want to talk more about the plot, but I will give a heads up before I get there. So let's talk a little bit more characters. Tom Baker, as the fourth Doctor, he's top of his game right now. He is... Towards the end of his run, he felt like he was slowing down a little, felt like maybe he didn't want to be there as much. But right now, wow, he's good. He's so great. Every interaction he has with basically anybody, including with himself. Like, it opens, he addresses the camera directly. And I guess if any doctor was going to get away with a fourth wall break to address the audience, yeah, Tom Baker's doctor, that fits. I feel like he could get away with that, and he more or less does. But seeing him interact with these people and, being upfront with them, but also being very selective with what he does or doesn't say, being willing to play the fool, but you can always tell there's something else going on in the background. Little quips here and there. He had more good lines than I even thought to write down. He's really good in this. This is top form Tom Baker, and pretty much from the get-go, phenomenal performance chemistry with Leela. The Doctor and Leela are a great pairing. Here's what's great about Leela. In terms of her being like from a more primitive setting and people compared to what we normally get with Doctor Who. Because generally modern day is the baseline. Not always, but that's usually the baseline. They're either from our time and place at the time the show is made, or they're from the future, or they're from another planet. She is technically from another planet, but society and cultural development wise, she's way further back than what we're used to seeing. The thing is, though, she's lacking a knowledge base, but she's not a fool. She can put 2 and 2 together. Or actually, the Doctor has a line that pretty much sums up their relationship perfectly and their entire dynamic. Because at one point she says to him, "You have a lot of answers, don't you?" And he says, "Oh yes, well, answers are easy. The hard part is asking the right questions." He has the answers, but she asks the right questions because she can look at a situation, see what's going on, and go, "Wait a minute, but what about this?" And in a way that doesn't make it feel like it's forcing the Doctor to miss something. It's not dumbing him down to make her look smarter. She can absolutely put the pieces together once she understands more of what's going on. Like I said, she's lacking that base level, that knowledge base. But once she figures a few things out, she can follow the logic. And that's a great dynamic. They're really good. And also, like I've mentioned this other time she's come up, Leela does not mess around. Like, at all. If she thinks the best solution is to take somebody out, she will. And in this episode, and this story at least, that does include straight up killing people. Like, that's just going to be what she does. That's what'll get us to where we need to be, so that's what she's going to do. I like her a lot. I like her, and again, like just the dynamic and the performance chemistry between the Doctor and Leela is terrific. They're really good, and I'll be excited to see more stuff with these two characters together. As I said, the other members of sort of Leela's people, way more dynamic bunch than I was expecting to get. Even like the religious leader, Neva, he's got more nuance to him than I thought would have been there. I'm used to them either just being a manipulator who knows they're talking BS or a blind fanatic. And he's not really either. He's a person. Is he manipulative? Yeah, absolutely. Does he also believe? At least in part. He wants to, at the very least. So that's again, just the core ideas. I mean, some of the later ideas are a little bit okay. But a lot of the core ideas, be it the character dynamics, the character presentation, and even some of the setup and some of the plot points aren't super original. Most of the component parts in this I've seen done somewhere else before, including in Doctor Who at various points, but it's polishing those components a little bit shinier than I'm used to seeing them, and they just fit together really well in this. From here on, we got to put the spoiler warning break, because I got to talk some more about the specifics. And I encourage you, if you have not seen this episode of Classic Doctor Who, go see it. It's fun. Leela's great. And then come on back and see my thoughts on the rest. That's your warning. So remember how I said the Doctor is kind of assumed to be the evil one? Yeah, my base assumption when that first happened is like, oh, well, he's an outsider. Of course, they just assume he's the evil one. Well, the thing is, at the end of the first episode, they find a carved monument of the evil one in a mountain. And no, that legitimately is Tom Baker's face. He is the evil one. So immediately we're like, what? Now, I kind of assumed it was going to be time travel, timey-wiminess, that he was like going to loop back and do something that made them think he was evil. But that isn't the case. It actually turns out he's been to this planet before. And while that might strike me as a missed opportunity, I like what they do enough that I'm like, no, actually, this might even be more interesting, or at least more unique. Because while classic era Doctor Who didn't do time bending nearly as much as you would think, the new show has kind of done it a lot more, to the point that I kind of assume it as an answer to weirdness like this. And so when that isn't the answer, and the answer is also really neat, oh, well, that's nice. So there's a few things going on here. It does the thing where the people who we're meeting are basically, well, they're either descendants or were aware of or somehow interacted with a survey team that had been here. There was a ship that crashed, and Leela's people are descendant from the survey team. And then there's the people who are descendant from the technicians that are their sworn enemy. And they stay in the crashed remains of the ship, but they have their own version of the mythology that has come up. And it's a little bit, it's even said flat out, they don't know if these people are the literal descendants of the people who crashed here in the ship, or if they were already the natives and they kind of misunderstood everything going on and made a religion around it. It's not entirely clear. It's been faded by time. But that kind of setup I've seen in some way, shape, or form. But first of all, it's not window dressing. There's a lot of recurring themes in here about questioning dogma. That's true of both sides. Like the technicians in the ship who are made, it's formulated flat out that they are more intelligent. Like the focus for Leela's people is on the physical. The focus for these people descended from the technicians is that they focus on their mental abilities. But they don't have the full picture either. They have their own dogma. So they're not being treated as like, oh, they're too intelligent to have their superstitions and their beliefs. Like, no, they have them too. And everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of characters questioning or grappling with or having little mini existential crises around these things is a recurrent thing across the entire story. So it really, again, it feels like they brought something really powerful out of this. And watching the Doctor and Leela climb into the mouth of a replica of his head, that's just fun. And of course, they get inside, and these people, they treat Leela as just one of the, they use the word savages. I'm not going to use that word again, but, it's there. And they initially take the Doctor for some, a little bit of a prophet. They even call him the Time Lord. But what we actually eventually find out is he had been here before. And he'd been to the crashed ship. And he thought helped and then just left. He did this whole thing to recalibrate their computer, and it involved hooking himself up to it, basically using his own brain as processing power to help get the thing back up and running again. And then once it was up and running, he was like, well, you're all set, cheerio, and then he left. The thing was, though, it downloaded part of his personality. But that in and of itself isn't the problem. The computer had already evolved its own personality, its own persona, its own actual life entity. It was alive, and he didn't recognize that at the time. And so when it ended up with a chunk of his personality inside of it, he basically made the thing have dissociative identity disorder. There are multiple clashing personalities within this computer, and they don't know what's going on. It doesn't know what it is. It's messed up. It's trying to move forward. It does have some degree of actually speaking to these people and giving them teachings, but it's very confused about what it is. as exemplified by the fact that when the doctor says, no, I am the doctor, and it's seeing him and it's seeing his face, and sort of the face that the computer uses to itself is also the doctor's face. The thing has a crisis. It's a really interesting idea. And I actually kind of wonder if Douglas Adams was inspired with some of the ideas he ended up doing in Life, the Universe, and Everything. And yes, I do know that his original pitch that became the novel Life, the Universe, and Everything was originally a Doctor Who story called Doctor Who and the Cricket Men. But I'm seeing this. I'm seeing the way the computer behaves in this, and especially that eventually the computer conjures like a couch, like a therapist's couch. There's a similar, although more mind-bendy version of that in Life, the Universe, and Everything. Now, I'm not saying that Doug Adams was ripping it off, but I am saying that like the attitude of this era of Doctor Who, I get why they tapped him to write scripts and then be a script supervisor for a season. His storytelling instincts gel really well with Doctor Who, and I wouldn't be surprised if he like took some of the ideas from this episode and be like, okay, well, there are these little bits that are interesting, but I could do more with them, because he does in his version. But like seeing the way the whole thing unfolds, because like, again, I thought this was going to be like, okay, so we've got the primitive people learn that God isn't real and the doctor will expose it and blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, we jump to, no, the doctor is the evil one, and the exposure of like the more advanced technology that's just laying around that Leela's people take as being, you know, some sort of relics or whatever, and those actually being like parts of a spacesuit, that is put in very early. So it pushes past what I thought they were going to stretch out into the whole story, and then moves into more interesting things with good supporting performances across the board. I actually really like the guy who heads up I think the Tesh is what they call them, the people descended from the technicians. And like, there's a point where he's looking on a screen and there's Leela strapped to a thing about to be zapped. And in a way that'll break her down to her component parts so they can analyze her. And the doctor says, well, that'll kill her. And the guy just goes, yes, master. Because he still thinks the doctor is like a prophet or something at this point. But just the calmness of this, he goes, yes, master. Like, yeah, that's what it's going to do. Is there a problem? He was creepily calm. It was great. This had a lot more going on than I was expecting based off sort of the starting premise. And again, Leela is just so much more than a one-sentence description of her could ever do justice. She's great. The doctor's great in this. I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard about this episode more. I don't remember ever hearing anybody talk about this. This one's really good. I'm gonna stick this one in the underappreciated pile. Like, classic fans, big this one up a little bit more than you do. It's good. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out there, like, share, and subscribe. Those all help me out. But don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here so you can come on back. Next time we get next time you need a break. I was already thinking of what I was going to say after that, even though that's my sign off and I should have stopped there. Next month, I'm going to take a look at a First Doctor story because November is Doctor Who anniversary, and I've still got First Doctor stuff to see. Plus, there'll be, you know, new specials and whatnot. But like I'll cover those on the main channel. Anyway, bye. Time to thank some Patreon backers, and in the spirit of October, I'd like to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Goddess Alita, Turok, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, and Rosalind Bennett. Thank you for your assistance. I don't know, I might try theming the shoutouts in the future. I don't know, we'll see. Thank you.